I parked by the curb, still smiling from the call with my lawyer. The ink was dry on the warehouse contract, 3 years ahead of schedule. I couldn't wait to tell Derek. I'd pictured him lifting me off the ground in one of those awkward half hugs, asking a million questions like he used to. I didn't even tell him I was coming. I thought the surprise would make it sweeter. But then I saw the balloons, blue and pink. A dozen at least floating above the porch rail. There was a ribbon curled around the mailbox and a white banner fluttering above the front steps. I squinted at the lettering. Welcome, baby Joseph. My keys slipped from my hand and hit the car floor. I hadn't known. Not a word. No text, no call. My hand trembled as I reached for the door handle. I stood up, smoothed my jacket, and climbed the steps. When the door opened, Derek stood there, holding it halfway. His mouth moved first, not his arms. No smile. You're not supposed to be here, he said. I blinked. You had the baby. He looked over his shoulder just for a second, then back at me. Yeah. I waited. He added, Claudia didn't want to make a big deal. And it didn't seem important to tell you. I stared past him into the living room, a flash of streamers, laughter, plates being set down. I could hear a woman's voice cooing light and melodic, like someone already settled into the role of grandmother. He didn't open the door wider. I opened my mouth, but no sound came. So I just nodded once. A small, tight nod. The kind you give strangers when they bump into you and don't say sorry. I see, I said. I hadn't meant to look inside. But when Derek stepped aside just enough to reach for something behind the door, I caught a glimpse. The living room was too full for something they didn't want to make a big deal about. I recognized Claudia's parents right away, both dressed like they were attending a gala, not a casual afternoon at home. 2 women I didn't know, probably cousins, were laughing near the window holding champagne flutes. There was a baby carrier on the floor beside the couch, empty. And that's when I saw Claudia's mother walk by with the baby in her arms, rocking him like he was hers. He let out a little cry and she kissed his forehead. She didn't even glance at me. Neither did Claudia. She was curled up in an armchair, legs tucked beneath her, scrolling on her phone like I hadn't just shown up. Like I wasn't standing in the doorway with my heart sliding out of my chest. No one paused. No one said, "Look who's here." No one offered a seat. Derek cleared his throat beside me. Claudia just wanted to keep it simple. You know how anxious she gets. I didn't answer. My eyes were still on the baby now, in another woman's arms. He had Derek's ears. I noticed that from here. You could have told me, I said, my voice lower than I expected. He rubbed the back of his neck. It just didn't feel like the right time. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't crumble me. I nodded again, smaller this time, and stepped back down onto the porch. I heard the door shut behind me. Not slammed, just shut. Clean and quiet, like a finished sentence. Back at the car, I sat for a moment and stared at the box in the back seat. The quilt edges were peeking from the lid. My fingers itched to reach for it. Instead, I started the engine, turned the wheel, and drove to the end of the block before pulling over again. I pulled over 3 times before I made myself go back, not to ring the bell, just to leave the box. It didn't feel right to keep it, and it didn't feel right to bring it home. So I parked across the street, checked the rearview mirror to make sure no one was watching, and walked it to their porch like a stranger delivering a package. I didn't knock. I didn't even set it neatly by the door. I placed it beside the flower pot, half shaded, and left. No card. No name. I wasn't sure it would matter. I'd been standing at their threshold a few hours ago, and not one person had said my name. Back in the car, I drove with both hands clenched on the wheel. I kept going over conversations I never had. Lines I could have said. Something to make Derek look me in the eye. But every version ended the same way, with him turning his back, gently, closing the door. At home, I poured myself some water and sat in the dark. The house didn't feel any different than yesterday, but something in me had. It was like the floor had quietly shifted beneath my feet, and now every step felt like guesswork. I checked my phone. Still no text from Derek. No photo. No meet your grandson. I opened social media without meaning to. Claudia's page was public. The newest post had gone up an hour ago. She was smiling, holding the baby against her chest. Her mother stood on one side, her father on the other. Derek was barely visible, half cut from the frame like an afterthought. The caption read, "He's finally here. Surrounded by love from day one." There were over 100 comments, all of them full of hearts, clapping hands, prayers. I scrolled and scrolled. No mention of me. Not in the comments, not in the post. It was like I didn't exist. I turned off the phone and sat still. It was easier than rage, easier than grief. Just stillness. A kind of invisible that settled into the bones. 3 days passed in a fog. I worked from home, cleaned out the pantry, even organized the linen closet, anything to stay upright and moving. The house was too quiet, and my phone was even quieter. No updates, no check-ins, just silence, with a side of photos I wasn't tagged in. That morning, I was wiping down the kitchen counters when the doorbell rang. Iris stood there with a bright smile and a blueberry tart balanced on a floral plate. She didn't wait for an invitation, just stepped inside like she always had. "I figured you'd be tired from the trip," she said, "but I wanted to bring something sweet. I saw the balloons at Derek's place. He's a dad now, huh?" I smiled politely and took the plate from her hands. "He is." She tilted her head, teasing. "You didn't tell me you were traveling. Europe, right?" I paused. Just a second too long. "Oh," I said lightly. "Not exactly Europe. Well, wherever you were, it must have been relaxing. Claudia's mother said you were gone for a while. I thought maybe you'd flown over for business or something." I nodded again, softer this time. "Something like that." She didn't notice the change in my voice. Just walked into the kitchen and started chatting about names and nursery colors. I let her talk, nodding at the right times, pouring us both some tea like it was any ordinary day. But inside, something settled into place. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd erased me. Claudia hadn't just excluded me from the baby shower or the hospital. She'd replaced me, rewritten the narrative so thoroughly that even my neighbors believed I'd been away. There was no messy confrontation, no big family drama. Just a smooth, edited version of life without me in it. I handed Iris her tea and smiled again, careful and practiced. She didn't need to know what I was thinking. She didn't need to hear the part where I realized they found it easier to explain my absence than include me in their presence. After she left, I pulled out my planner and circled Friday in red. I had a meeting to reschedule and a call to make. That afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone scrolling through old messages like they might prove I hadn't imagined it. I wanted to find something, some word, some hint that I'd just missed. Maybe I hadn't been paying close enough attention. Maybe the clues were there, but they weren't. Derek's messages were short, spaced out over weeks. "All good here. She's resting." Nothing new yet. Not once did he say the baby. Not once did he say soon or we're close. No photos, no countdowns. Just enough to keep me in the background without disappearing completely. Claudia never messaged at all. Not one line. Not even a forwarded emoji. It hit me then how quiet it had all been, how strategically quiet. This wasn't forgetfulness. It was curation. That evening, I ran into a former colleague at the post office. She used to do bookkeeping for my firm before retirement. Her face lit up when she saw me. "Marlene, I thought you were out of town for the baptism." I blinked. "What baptism?" Her smile faded. "Oh, I just assumed. Claudia's mother posted the photos. Looked like a beautiful ceremony. Vineyard setting, lovely weather." I didn't respond. She kept talking, listing off flower arrangements and the caterer and how sweet the baby looked in white. My mouth went dry. I nodded when appropriate. I think I even smiled. But inside, something pulled tight, like thread being yanked out of place. I walked home slower than usual. My legs felt heavy. In my head, I saw that vineyard rows of grapes, long tables, laughter. Claudia's mother beaming. Derek holding the baby. A gathering planned, hosted, celebrated. And I hadn't even known it happened. When I got home, I sat in the hallway for a long time, shoes still on purse, still on my shoulder. I didn't cry. I just sat there, taking it all in. There were no invitations I missed. No messages lost in the void. They had simply decided I didn't belong there. Later that night, I opened the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet and found the estate folder. Then I picked up the phone. I didn't call Derek. I didn't draft a text that would take hours to phrase only to sit unread. I simply opened the calendar on my phone and deleted the lunch reservation for next Thursday. 2 taps. Gone. Funny how fast an expectation can disappear when you finally stop feeding it. The harder task was pulling out the estate folder. It had sat untouched for years, thick, heavy, labeled in my handwriting Bishop Holdings. Inside were documents for properties, logistics contracts, insurance filings, and the succession agreement I once thought was straightforward. I used to picture Derek running it all one day. The trucks, the warehouses, the employees who've known him since he was a teenager, riding shotgun in my office after school. My lawyer, Helen Grant, picked up on the second ring. "Marlene, this is unusual timing," she said when I asked for an immediate review. "It's overdue timing," I answered. She didn't press. That's why I keep her. We met 2 hours later. No small talk. Just folders, indented tabs, signature lines waiting to be rewritten. Helen walked me through each section, her voice level and factual. Will, trust, healthcare directive, company succession, beneficiaries. Derek was listed as primary everywhere. I listened as she read his name aloud again and again, like a refrain to a song I no longer recognized. "We update it all," I said finally. She lifted her chin. "Completely." "Not out of spite," I clarified. "Out of accuracy." We replaced his name as successor with someone who earned the chair without assuming it. Lucia Morales. 18 years with my company, knows the business better than any MBA, and still sends birthday cards to the break room calendar without being reminded. Derek stays in the will, but not as the future, not as the axis, a branch, not the trunk. Nothing drastic, nothing dramatic, just true. When I signed the final document, the pen paused for half a breath in my fingers. Not hesitation, recognition. The kind that aches but clarifies. I didn't hand it to them. I didn't knock or call ahead. I just dropped the envelope into their mailbox on a Wednesday morning before the street filled with school buses and garbage trucks. It was unmarked from the outside, just my handwriting, and a return address I didn't expect them to use. Inside was a folded card, soft blue, with silver trim. The kind you'd buy for a newborn if you were invited to a celebration. I'd written one sentence inside. "I hope your first year is full of things that matter more than pride." Beneath the card, I included a photo from 32 years ago. Derek wrapped in a hospital blanket, tucked into my arms. My hair was wild from labor. I was smiling without makeup, flushed and raw. His face, so impossibly small, nestled against my chest. On the back I wrote, "May he grow up knowing more than one version of the story." Last was a copy of the trust revision, not the whole binder, just the page with Derek's name, shifted down, and Lucia's moved in above it. A clean change, signed and dated. I didn't write a note. No explanation. No accusation. I knew they wouldn't respond. I didn't need them to. I wasn't trying to change their minds. I just wanted the truth to sit there quietly between us, whether they acknowledged it or not. Back home, I boiled water for tea and left my phone in the other room. No part of me waited for a text. The silence was predictable now, almost comfortable in how consistent it had become. Days passed. No word. No reply. I drove by their house once the following week and saw the mailbox still stuffed. Maybe they were out of town. Maybe they saw my handwriting and set it aside. I didn't wonder too hard. Some letters don't need to be read. Some truths just need to exist, folded, sealed, delivered. That weekend, I took the spare key from the hook near my door and walked it out to the trash. Then I changed the locks. The weeks that followed were quiet in a different way. Not empty, just cleared out. Like a room with the windows open after a storm. I stopped checking for messages. I didn't ask about the baby. The silence, once sharp, had dulled into something I could live with. I threw myself into work not out of escape, but out of choice. There was still a business to run, and I wasn't done shaping it. I met with Lucia 3 times a week. We sat across from each other at the conference table, spreadsheets, open coffee cooling beside us. She took notes with a pen, not a laptop. She listened. She asked the right questions. She didn't flinch when I handed her the updated transition documents. She just said, "Thank you. I won't let you down." I believed her. My lawyer sent the finalized trust paperwork in a cream envelope. I didn't open it right away. I left it on the hall table for 3 days, walking past it like a memory I wasn't ready to file. When I finally slit the seal, I didn't read every page. I just looked for the signature line, saw my name at the bottom, and felt something settle. One Saturday, I volunteered at the annual logistics fair, helping high school students tour warehouse setups and loading software. A woman with a clipboard introduced me to one of the vendors. "This is Derek's mother," she said brightly. "Her son works in distribution, too." I smiled, polite. Then I shook the vendor's hand and said, "I'm Marlene Bishop. I run Bishop Freight." It wasn't sharp. It wasn't pointed. It was just true. And it felt more accurate than any role someone else had tried to give me. Later that afternoon, I brought home leftover flyers and a new set of gloves for the garden. The tulip bulbs had sprouted early, reaching up without being asked. I spent the evening in the dirt, pruning and watering, not waiting for anything to bloom in someone else's yard. The next morning, a package arrived at my doorstep. No return label. Just a box and something familiar inside. The box was plain brown, taped neatly, no handwriting I recognized. I almost didn't bring it inside. Thought maybe it was a wrong delivery. But my name was printed clearly on the label, no return address. It sat on the counter for nearly an hour before I opened it. Inside was the quilt. The one I'd left on their porch. The one I'd stitched every evening for weeks, thumb pricked more than once, edges trimmed and pressed by hand. The silver rattle wasn't there, just the fabric folded roughly, not how I had done it. There was no note, no card, no message, just the weight of it returned without ceremony. I stood for a moment, letting the silence spread. The kettle clicked off behind me, water long boiled and forgotten. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I had already bled that wound dry. I lifted the quilt and ran my fingers over the seams. One corner had come slightly undone, the thread tugged loose. I smoothed it flat, then refolded it carefully, how it was meant to be folded, and carried it to the back bedroom. The drawer was already waiting. I placed it inside, tucked it between linen sets and a box of old photographs. Before I closed it, I added a small note on top. If he ever wants it, it's still here. That was all I had left to give. Not presents, not permission. Just the quiet promise that not everything would be erased, even if I had to protect it alone. The sun dipped behind the fence by the time I finished my tea. I watered the tulips again, though they didn't need it. Sat on the porch for a while, listening to the neighbor's wind chime rattle lazily in the breeze. I didn't think about Derek. I didn't try to understand Claudia. I just sat with myself, with the stillness I'd grown used to, and let it hold me. Later that evening, I took out the estate journal and turned to a clean page. I wrote a date, a name, and then drew a slow line under it. The porch light came on as I turned the final key in the new lock. The soft click felt cleaner this time, final but not sharp. I stood there for a moment, my hand resting on the knob, looking out at the street. No cars slowing down, no footsteps up the walk, no balloons tied to the rail. Just stillness. And it was enough. There was no ache in my chest, no itch in my fingers to refresh a screen or scan for missed calls. I didn't wonder what Derek was doing. I didn't picture the baby's face. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't balancing two versions of the same hope, one where they remembered me and one where they didn't. I stepped inside, shut the door, and turned off my phone. The house felt different. Not empty, just mine. I poured a glass of water, walked to my desk, and opened the notebook I kept by the lamp. On the first blank page, I wrote a new heading, What I Want Next. No mention of anyone else's timeline. No columns for family plans or shared holidays. I wrote down the idea for a mentorship program Lucia had brought up last month. I jotted down 2 cities I might visit next spring. I made a note to repaint the hallway. Pale wheat, maybe. When I finished, I closed the notebook and left it open on the table. No need to tuck it away. This story wasn't a secret. I went to bed early. I didn't check for messages. I didn't look at Claudia's page. The quilt stayed in its drawer, and the rattle, well, I hadn't seen it since I left it behind. That too was all right. As I turned off the light, I looked once more toward the door. It stood quiet, undisturbed, with a new lock and a new key. It would open when I chose. It would stay closed when I needed. I settled into the sheets, pulled the blanket high, and let the stillness hold me. In the morning, I would wake up with a plan. One built only from what was still mine to hold.